Welcome to this episode of the Growth Focus podcast, where we bring tech leaders together to talk all things tech. This week, I'm really excited to have our guest on today. We have Gerty from 917 Solutions. We're going to be talking about tech, IT, and outsourced solutions, among many, many other things. So please make sure you stay to the end. She's got some great stuff that she's going to be sharing with us on this episode. So without further ado, Gerty, can I just ask you to introduce yourself and maybe give us a little snippet of your story, of your background, where you came from, and how you got to be the CEO of 917 Solutions today?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the introduction, Gary. So I started 917 Solutions about 2 years ago after I finished up as a director of IT for a construction company. And I ended up starting my company after doing a lot of 1099 contracting for different VARs in the space, so working with a lot of Fortune 500 and 1000 companies in deploying Microsoft 365 and helping them to make the most of their Microsoft 365 investments and use the different tools that Microsoft uses for cybersecurity. And so over the years, it's really just been, adapting to change within the business. So when I first started the business, I thought that I was going to be a consultant forever. And I was just like, wow, I love being a consultant, and this is going to be what I live off of for the rest of my life. But after a while, I missed really leading teams because that's what I enjoy doing, in helping to build like really high performing teams. And so I was like, okay, well, how could I do that within the business? We could continue our consulting practice and bring on more people, but that really didn't feel as kind of what we were looking for. And so we ended up introducing managed services into the mix. So providing outsourced IT for smaller businesses and companies to help look after their IT. And so that kind of just opened up the doorway for us growing in the way that we have this year.
Wow. Yeah. Fantastic. Fascinating story. Especially if you come from, one big industry like the construction industry, then becoming, going into consultancy. And consultancy always is almost like the first stepping stone, isn't it? To get to moving from corporate, go to consultant, and then what's the next step? And you managed to take that next step with 917 Solutions. So apart from that career process that you wanted, what would you say motivated you to start a woman-owned business, an IT outsourcing company? What was the main motivation behind that for you?
That's a really good question. So I think for a really long time, I had this goal as I was like climbing the corporate ladder that I would eventually become a director of IT, and I'd have the opportunity to, help run an organization, and I would know what it felt like to be in that leadership position. And so for such a long time, that was my career goal. And so once I got to that goal, I was kind of just beside myself because I had reached that goal, and I had kind of hit my growth from that point of view. And I knew what I could do to, continue growing in the company and what upward mobility would look like. But ultimately, it would just be a waiting game, right? Like there'd be so many years I'd have to put in to do that. And so I've always loved entrepreneurship since I was really young. I would do things to, find a way to make money and just hustle as much as possible. And so I was like, what if I started my own business? Like, what would that look like? That just opens up so many other doors,
Yeah, it absolutely does. And I think there's a little golden nugget in there about us as human beings. It's, I couldn't help but reminisce when you were talking there of a sort of situation just like you. I'd worked really, really hard to get to it. Back in my career, I'd worked really, really hard to rise up that corporate ladder. I eventually they gave me partnership within the company, and that was all I was aiming for. And then once I became a partner in the company, I thought, this is it. And it was this sudden thing that everything I'd worked towards, that was my achievement. And so I thought, oh, now what? What this? Yes, it's great. You have all the perks and being a partner and whatnot, but I thought it would be different. I just thought there'd be some, and it wasn't because the role wasn't satisfying. It was because I didn't have a goal beyond that, apart from just to make partner. And then that's when the entrepreneur bug bit, and then we went on to grow our own company and whatnot. So that's an absolute thing. People climbing the ladder, and I'm sure people listening would have felt that as well. I'm thinking, I'm working really hard, but you get to this point and go, what's next? What's next?
Right.
And
Yeah.
entrepreneurship gives you that. That gives you that option to look elsewhere. Now, talking about entrepreneurship, can you share a success story where your company, for those people who don't know what 917 actually does, etc., could you
hmm
just give us a success story where your company's has significantly improved a client's operation in what they were actually doing compared to what they were doing before?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one scenario in particular, we were helping a healthcare firm, and they came to us. They had just, recovered, or not recovered, but they had gone through an incident. A cybersecurity incident happened, and a new leader had come in, and he had no idea what was set up. He had no idea what position they were in. He had only known that they were attacked, and he didn't really understand what the impact was, what they were paying for, what they were using, what they weren't using. And so he was completely new to the company. So when he first called us up, I was like, okay, well, we can help you, fix the first problem at hand, but we should probably understand a lot of what you're paying for because with Microsoft 365, when you're paying for the license, it opens up a bunch of different features. And he was looking at buying all sorts of tools and all sorts of things to help build his cybersecurity program. And so we had him, take a step back and we assessed the full situation. So we looked at everything that had been billed on the accounts and retroactively, assessed what had been done previously and worked with him to create a plan to improve his cybersecurity, but then also get a hold of how much they were investing in IT. And what really changed there is we helped them to introduce the Zero Trust program, where his company was formerly just connected to a server, but they were still so small that it didn't make sense to have all of these resources. And the server was expiring. So we were like, okay, well, we can put everything up in the cloud, and you're already paying for all of these things anyway. So it just makes sense to, make the most of your investments. So we helped them with that transition. And I think the last time that I talked to him, he told me like it's just a night and day difference, right? Like he
Mm.
knows what his costs are. He knows what the different features of Microsoft are doing. For the different parts of Microsoft that don't necessarily work for what they're doing, we've found tools to, supplement and also improve the security of the organization. And we've also helped him to plan for adding headcount in. So how many technicians do you need? What do they need to do? And what projects are the company working on that requires outside consultants because they wanted to start working on moving out of QuickBooks and building an ERP because they're in that growth phase. So
Mhm.
we we were basically his complete outsourced IT arm. So he had a
Yeah.
question that he didn't know about. He just went right to us with it. And it's a night and day difference. Like he feels comfortable with the way that the environment is set up. He gets all of the alerts when something goes wrong. And if there's something beyond what he can do, he reaches out to us and we help him navigate.
That's brilliant. Yeah. So that leads me to a another really important question. Yeah, there'll be consultants out there listening to this. There'll be firms listening to this. When it comes to outsourcing, especially like an entire part or an entire part of an IT department, how do you go
Mhm.
out building trust with other companies and to say, hey, trust me, we can take care of this?
I think the big thing with building trust for us has really been just doing our due diligence. So we like to go through when we start working with a customer is asking them a lot of the hard-hitting questions, right? So um, uh, if people don't trust you, they're not going to share the answers to some of the questions that we ask during our first call. But like, do you have cybersecurity insurance? Do you know what the coverage is for? Do you know how much it's for? Have you had it before and lost it? Why did you lose it? Do you want to get it back again? Do you have to answer security questionnaires? Do you answer them honestly? Or are you just kind of filling it out, not knowing what the answers are?
So you're
And
kind of
then
calling them out on their own mistakes as well.
yeah, so trying to build up that level of trust between us because the answer to these questions really hinges on our ability to deliver the service, right? If they're holding and squirreling away information from us and we're working on a project for one thing, but ultimately in their mind they're thinking of another thing, like we're not on the same plan, we're not on the same page. We don't know what the measure of success looks like.
Mhm.
So getting it all out there in the first call for us has worked really well because then we know, okay, this is what you want your future to look like. These are your goals ultimately, and this is where you want to grow. And
Yeah.
maybe we can help, maybe we can't if we're not on the same page. But those questions, I think, for a lot of our customers that we do bring on board, help us to establish and build that trust from the start. And that due diligence piece that I was talking about, we typically go through an audit and just tell people, like, you might not need our services. There's been a few people where we've had to refer them out to somebody else, but
Mhm.
for the most part, we like to just make sure we understand what the amount of risk that's involved so that they understand and we understand, because fixing everything from scratch is a lot and it requires a lot of change. So sussing that out from the beginning really helps us to give them the right expectation so that they know, like, okay, this is going to be a lot of work. Sometimes they
Yeah.
know, sometimes they don't. They just think there's a button we can turn on.
Yeah, I think that's very much. Yeah, you can get companies like that. So, oh, just come in, plug it in, and it will just work fine. Just help me. But yeah, you're absolutely right there. It's about building trust. It's about becoming a trusted advisor. Without an agenda. And if you're going in and
Mhm.
asking them questions and making them aware of their own situations and giving them a plan of how they, where they're at risk, where they can
Mhm.
improve and things like that. And like you say, maybe you won't be able to help them. Maybe you do have to pass it on. Maybe it's something else that they need. But by
Mhm.
being that trusted advisor first is one of the best ways to build trust within new contacts and new businesses, and the best way to do that is to ask the right pertinent questions, about where show them, as I said, showing them what's a risk, but if it's a different case, it's almost showing them how to buy, how to
Yeah.
assess what they need and things like that, and showing them how to do that. Because some people might only buy this once every 5 years, and if staff is turning, they might have only done it twice in their career, right? How
Yep.
will they know what the right
Exactly.
questions to ask is? So it's really important, and I'm glad you were saying about making sure you're doing your due diligence as well, but you're actually helping them doing it. So talking about due diligence, um, what emerging cybersecurity threats should a business be most concerned about today, in your opinion, from what you can see that they're just unaware of?
That's a really great question. I think one of the biggest emerging threats for small businesses really are the phishing attacks. AI has just changed how phishing attacks are delivered and the scale at which they're delivered. I think paying attention to holidays is really important. We typically see phishing attacks carried out successfully during the holidays. So whenever they think that your guard is going to be down, that's when they tend to attack, and that's when they know that you're not going to be, double checking something, triple checking something. There have been a few holidays recently. Super Bowl isn't a holiday, but it's a big thing. There
Yeah,
are a lot
yeah.
of attacks that happened during Super Bowl.
Yeah, people just tend to let their guards down all round, don't they? When it
Yep.
comes to when it comes to either events or holidays or whatever. Um, when it comes to here's a question which I get asked, and it's a very sort of topical question at the moment. How do you balance? How do you balance the company's apparent need to bring people back on site to having outsourced a complete department? How
Uh,
does one find that right balance?
I think that this is such an interesting question because um, so many of my peers are outsourcing their marketing or they're outsourcing different components of their business. Um, but I think at the end of the day, it's what level of risk you're comfortable with, right? Like, what's the need behind bringing people on site and putting that together and assessing from there the trade-offs for it. So we've been thinking of adding a permanent location in Flagstaff, Arizona, and getting an office space there. It's something that we definitely want to do because we want to make sure that our equipment is all stored in one location. Right now isn't the right time for us. But in the future, as we grow, I think setting a home base there is going to be really important for us. Um,
Yeah.
one, because we want to have that local presence, but also because the remote work, the remote opportunities that we have right now, because of our zip code, kind of inhibit us. So I think it's making a list of the trade-offs and what matters most to the growth of the business and how that's going to impact the day-to-day. And also like verifying whether or not it actually happens, right? So I'm thinking in my mind that we should open up this on-site location in Flagstaff with one of our businesses that we work with there, but maybe, my assumptions are incorrect. And after a year, we find out that we actually didn't need that office at all. So, going
Yeah.
back to the drawing board and looking at whether it or not it actually helped, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, there is a lot of talk within the industries now, especially within the tech world, because post-COVID, everybody went remote. No one thought they could go remote, but everyone
Hmm.
was able to go remote, and not only go remote, really thrive from being remote. And there seems to be this pressure now from various avenues, from finance, from the VCs, from the banks, to get back into the offices,
Hmm.
and bring that team back. And I think IT and tech is one of those industries which could probably wait out and see what happens
Hmm.
over the course of the next year or two, just to see, do they have to go back? Do they have to put actually bums on seats back in offices, buildings, and things like that? So we'll keep an eye on that and just see how that works for people. But that leads nicely into another sector of what's on everybody's lips, and that's AI. AI is everywhere. It doesn't matter what part of industry you're in. It doesn't matter what part of tech you're in. It doesn't matter even if you're out of it. AI is on everyone's phone. It's on everyone's computer. It works all over the place. So my question to you would be this, and it would be remiss of me not to ask you this question: is how do you see the role of AI and automation evolving in outsourcing, in IT outsourcing? And is your company preparing anything for that? Or is it
Hmm.
something that you can push down, kick the can down the road a little bit?
That is a really good question. So for us, we do use AI currently, not for any of our customer stuff, but for improving our workflows internally. Um, well, I think it's going to be really important for us to consider where the data is at before we use the AI and understanding where, I guess, how much of the data that we're feeding AI is like proprietary data and should be locked away versus which data is data that we're learning, basically
Mm.
training AI with. And what we're finding is for our team members that are learning and are just starting to get their feet under them in IT, it's a really good way for them to ask questions
Mm.
and get thoughtful answers back, right? So it's a good feedback mechanism like, hey, what would happen if I did this? The answers, you have to be careful because the answers aren't always correct. They're wrong most of the time. But for social situations, right, where you need to have grace and things like that, AI is really helpful to give you those words that you might not otherwise have. Is something that we have found is really useful for our team in improving their communication for our customers. Um, right now, we don't use AI in our tools because we want to make sure that we know what data is getting fed to the AI. I personally use AI in my day-to-day with helping build some of our proposals because so much of it is consistent. I've been able to train my assistant, basically my AI, to help me craft those and to help me build them and make sure that they're in line with what we would typically produce. So it's been really helpful at saving me time there because that used to take me so long. And it's me now, which is just
Mm.
the weirdest thing.
Yeah, it's learned from you, and I think this is a lovely way to actually segue into AI and security. And it's I've one of my friends and who lives just around the corner from me. He's chief of board of cybersecurity, and AI is one of those big things which he's always talking about. And like you quite rightly said there, Gertie, is we've got to be very careful what we feed AI because of what it's learning from. And if we
Mhm.
put all the security measures in place, it learns from the security measures, and then the security measures go above and beyond, and it learns from that again. So it's this ever evolving, constant feed that AI
Hmm.
can get more and more dangerous, and security is a very big thing from that. But I think it's like you said, it's a great time saver, AI,
Hmm.
in
Yep.
whichever industry you're in. It does learn well from you, but it crap in, crap out. Therefore, that's why we get
Yeah.
some bad answers, basically. So if you, as long as you're feeding it good stuff, then it will serve you well. And I think the word serve is a massive word there, because it cannot become master. We have to be
Hmm.
master of AI, and
Yep.
we have to utilize it to the best of its ability from there. So that being said, I want to just move away from AI and talk about misconceptions people have about outsourcing. I know there's a lot of companies out there who go, "Oh, I don't know if I want to outsource everything."
Hmm.
They go from one extreme of outsource. I don't know if I'm too scared to outsource everything. To, does that mean you're going to be my IT man stuck near the cupboard, and be the,
Yeah.
the IT person or stuff like that? What do you think are the biggest misconceptions business have about IT outsourcing, and how do you go about addressing those?
For IT outsourcing, I think one of the biggest misconceptions that we see teams have, the teams that we support, is that we're going to take their jobs from them. A
Mm,
lot of the times,
mm,
when we're working with really large organizations, our goal isn't to, support the whole organization. Um, there's a point where it's just not realistic, right? And
yeah.
so in those situations, we do want you to keep your IT department and just use us to be an extension of the things that you can't do. So like vulnerability management, right? Vulnerabilities are very critical. They need to be patched. Not all of them are super important, just the exploitable ones, but your IT team doesn't have time to do that, right? So we can work on that for you and we'll help you to build a plan to do that and minimize your risk in that area. But your IT team can keep their jobs. We're not going to
Yeah.
take those from them. So in some situations, it's a conversation of which parts of your IT aren't working, right? Which
Mhm.
parts of it, if you could give to somebody else that you know has experience in doing it, would you trust to do that? Like basically breaking it down a little bit more and really analyzing how you can use your team the best. So sometimes we talk to people and they're like, oh, I want to get rid of my whole IT department. But then we have a conversation with them and it turns out they actually want to keep their IT team. They just didn't know how to make sure that everyone was fully utilized in the best possible way, right? So
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
sometimes it's just, fixing the problem with them through solutions that we offer and
Hmm.
helping them to maintain it over time. For some organizations, they do need another person, and we have a team, so it's like we've got multiple people for them, and we can offer them support in different areas. So it's just understanding the business, why this change is happening, and if it makes sense for us to, insert ourselves there.
Yeah, yeah, and I think, that's a great way of looking at it. Is yeah, whenever there's talk about outsourcing, whether it be IT outsourcing or something that we do a lot with our clients is the sales team and stuff like that. People think, oh, you're gonna
Hmm.
take a whole team away, or the people are worried about their jobs. No, we're there to enhance it.
Hmm.
This is what is there. They're there to enhance it, to fill in the gaps where necessary, so you can be as cohesive as you possibly can while
Hmm.
still maintaining your team. So moving on from the thing, I want to talk a little about you now. I want to talk about, you, business owner, entrepreneur, and stuff like that. Everyone seems to think, we've talked about this before, Gertie. Everyone sees the pinnacle of where they want to be, the successful business and stuff. But we both know
Hmm.
that, and those listening also know that it's a journey, and that journey isn't necessarily a straight line from day one of opening to where we want to go. It's fraught with challenges. What is would you say is your biggest bugbear being a business owner today? What is the biggest challenges what is the biggest challenge you're having today, and what are you doing to address it and get past it?
Yeah, I think that we've just had so much growth. I think a year ago at the beginning of the year, once we decided to, pivot, my biggest fear was making sure that I wasn't the one doing everything, right? So I wasn't running all of the different strings in the background and that I could rely on my team to do that. And we managed to fix that by implementing a lot of processes and procedures and documenting a lot of what we do, which is great. And now that we're here closer towards the end of the year, the problem that we're facing now is that now that people have new types of roles delegated to them, understanding how they can do the best in their current role to help grow more team members. So I think right now we're trying to look ahead and see into the future a little bit of what it looks like for all of the team members. So, what does your future look like here? How do we plan for that? How do we as a business prepare for that? What steps do we need to take to make sure that we can provide what people need to grow their families, to support their families, but also how do we do that realistically with the way that we're growing, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
without over promising, how can we just start to put these things in place so that next year, when it comes time to, review how everyone's done at the end of the year, how do we make sure that we're improving in the right ways? How are we tracking that? How are we having those conversations and setting those expectations, right? I think a lot of it is just like making sure that we're serving our people well, I think is the biggest challenge that we have next. Like our people have helped us grow really well, and now it's just making sure that we can continue to nurture them through the next few years.
Yeah, that's an awesome piece. Yeah, exactly right. Because looking after and nurturing them, making the team members felt understood, and
Hmm.
visible that they're there, is really, really important. I mean, in order for any entrepreneur to reach their destination, they must understand they can't do it alone. They're going to need a great team. They get that
Yeah.
team not only has to be great at what they do, that not only has to have a great attitude, but also share a vision.
Hmm.
And if they understand what the vision is and share the vision, then they're all in the same boat and they're all rowing towards that same destination as as the founder and where do you want to go, and hopefully everybody achieves and gets there. So with that, what have you been doing, or what is your advice with regard to attracting and retaining good team members?
I think so far I've made a few mistakes here and there, and I think one of the biggest things is setting expectations and making sure that we're all aligned on the same behavior, right? We all follow the same status quo, and we're also just on the same page when it comes to the service that we deliver and how
Mm-hmm.
we deliver it, and the resources that we provide for our team. The reason why I ended up documenting a lot of procedures for our team is one of my pet peeves is when someone tells you to do something, but they haven't like giving you any information on how to do it, right? And they
Mm-hmm.
expect you to like read their mind when you're doing it. And so that's why I'm a big fan of setting expectations, not only for us, but for our customers, right? Making sure we're on the same page all the time. Um, and I wanted to make it so that the team had the reference to go to and they had the resources to fall back on when they needed it. So I wouldn't have to be there as much. If they had questions, they could, ask me. But ultimately, if they have the values that we're looking for that we seek out during the hiring process, we know that they have the ability to, take feedback, to follow instructions, and they also have the fire in their belly to grow. And I think when we're doing our outreach and looking for people to hire, those are the conversations that we like to have, right? Like, where do you see your future? Like, where do you want to go? Like, why aren't you there yet? Um, what have you tried so far? How do you like to work? Um, and can you work on a team, right? So I think a lot of how we've built our team has been in just meeting people, learning about them, where their growth goals are, and what their aspirations are. And then, based on their current skill sets and their former experience, what they've taken so far, figuring out if they can, like, basically do the job, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's so funny. We have a team member that used to work in finance, who now helps us do a lot of auditing and compliance, and she's got a really great mind for that. And one of our team members, some of my team members I've worked with for years, so that's also a little
Yeah.
bit helpful. But I think a lot of the talent outreach that we've done so far is just connecting with people and making sure that we understand them and that we're on the same page. We have our list of questions that we typically ask to
Mm-hmm.
identify those answers and try and figure it out. But it's always changing.
Yeah, it has to be. It's a constantly evolving as you grow as well. As you grow,
Hmm.
your values grow. And you and I have talked about this before. It's about sticking to your values. whether that be
Yep.
team members, whether that be potential clients. If it's misaligned with your values, we don't have to have them. We don't have to work with them. Whether, as I said, whether it be a team member or a potential client. I agree with you wholeheartedly, Gerty, because there's two really important nuggets there, and I love taking these little nuggets from my guests because and breaking them down a little bit. The first was, we talked about expectations. What are their expectations? What are your expectations? And the biggest reason for disappointment, the biggest reason for people feeling disillusioned is their expectations weren't being met. So as employers, as business owners, we must set those expectations so they don't have a different expectation.
Yep.
And then it's not met. All right. So if we set the expectation, we both know what that line is, and then we can both work towards achieving that line. Whereas if we leave like you said, they ask me to do something, but they don't give me any guidelines how to do that. What does success look like? What are you classifying success at? How do I know if I even achieved that line? It's almost like asking someone to do the 100-meter dash without putting the line at the back at the end, and they don't know when to start running, right? So you must give them that expectation so they know the line they need to cross in order to see what success looks like. So that's definitely one thing. How do we avoid people being upset? Set clear expectations. And then we know both we can meet them. The other nugget that you touched on, which is very, very close to my heart, is SOPs. As business owners, the sooner we start writing SOPs, videoing SOPs, and make it, and they can change. They can literally change as we grow again. But the sooner we video them, we document them, file them, it just makes us two things. Number one, far more efficient as business owners. Far more efficient as business owners. So when we take a member on board, it's a lot easier to train them. Again, expectations are set in there because it's set. But what a lot of people do not see the value in SOP is this. If you have SOPs, it makes your company worth more money. The value of your company increases because it's something that's set in stone. It's something that it's your IP, that this is how this company works. This is what the benchmarks they work to. This is actually how it's done. So effectively, a buyer can come in and look at it and go, we know exactly how to run that company now. It's right there. And so once they know how to use that, then they can change it into what they can morph it into the way they want to do things. But there's a standard all set already, So, and the SOPs, we've put them in place. And I'm off on a soapbox here because I said it was absolutely a passion of mine to making sure they're there. It eliminates the need for the owner to be there. If you have standard SOPs, it eliminates the need for the owner to be there. And when you eliminate the need for the owner to be there, the value of your company goes up again.
Wow.
So if you think about it this way, when you're looking at it, if you have your house is going to be worth more. If someone's going to come and buy your house is worth more without you being in it. They want an empty house. They don't want you squatting in it. They might want you a little bit there to tell you how the kitchen works and how the boiler works and stuff like that, but then they want you out of it. Right?
Yeah.
If it's reliant upon you and all your SOPs are up here, then the value, your value, the company value, everything goes down.
Yeah. Wow. I never knew that, so it's a really good nugget for me. So it's really good feedback to keep us, documenting these processes and these procedures.
Absolutely, especially in a day and age now where you can just video it, you can just press record, you can screenshot, everything you can do. The more you do, the easier it becomes, and then it's only about managing and changing as opposed to doing it right from the very, very start. So I'm glad you brought that up. I'm sorry I went off on a tangent about that, but as I said, it's just one of those things where as soon as I hear it, I go, brilliant. That's exactly what every company should be doing. So that leads us to thank you very much, Gerty, for your time on. I can't believe where the time has gone already. It's gone so quickly. As it does. It really truly has been fun. So at the end of every interview, I like to ask a question, the final question to my guest. It's always going to be a bit of a loaded question.
Yeah.
All right. So your loaded question is this. You've shared so much with us today. You've shared about how your career, the challenges you got, what the challenges are outside, and the continuous growth of the infrastructure and why it's important and whatnot. But I want to go, rather than looking forward, I want to go backwards a bit. So if you could give one piece of advice to your younger self, either about career choices, either about entrepreneur choices, or whichever way, all right, for a human being, humanity's success, what would that one piece of advice be?
I think that one of the best pieces of advice I've gotten is from one of my former bosses and mentors, and he would just drill this into us all the time, and it really changed my uh, the way that I view work, and it's what I repeat to myself when I'm kind of like down and not sure what to do. But he says there's passengers and there's drivers and there's roadkill. So he's like, you need to know where your place is all the time, right? So in some situations, you're a passenger, right? Like as a CEO, I do want to get to a point where I can lead the team and I'm a passenger to all the other functions, right?
Mhm.
Um, but for where the company's at right now, I have to be the driver. I don't ever want to be the roadkill. And
No.
so that's the thing that just kicks me in my butt and makes me start working, right? It's like, which one are you going to be today? I'd rather be the driver.
Yes, absolutely. I thought, what a great way of looking at it. I've never heard that before. I'm going to steal that. I'm going to steal that and use it. Driver, passenger, or roadkill.
Yep,
Which one you want
whatever.
to be, and when do you
y-
want to be it? That's
Yeah.
brilliant. Thank you for that, Gertie. So, listen, how can people get hold of you? If people want to get hold of you, either talk about outsourcing, or they want to talk about the infrastructure, or they just want to get to know
Mhm.
you, what's the best way of getting in touch of you?
I would say, honestly, probably LinkedIn. I've got a
Mhm.
very unique name, Gerty Tsinnie, and you can also reach out to me on our website. I think I've got a calendar link on our contact page. So if you want to schedule something, you can schedule me in there. And yeah, I'm just really happy to have met you, Gary, and like had this conversation with you. It's just been so fun getting to, see through your lens and see how you also do things.
Well, no, it's been an absolute, well, thank you for that, but it's been an absolute pleasure having you here with us, sharing your insights and your expertise, with us. So again, thank you very much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure having you here. So guys, again, we come to a very, very quick end of this particular episode, but it has been absolutely fun. Gertie has shared so much with us with insights and expertise, but more importantly, some really, really great nuggets that she has imparted with us. So listen, like always, if you've got even one part, one nugget that you could utilize today, you see that's of value, please do one or four or all four, which is to make sure you like, make sure you comment, make sure you subscribe, and please, please make sure you share so that you can get this message out and get this expertise out to the rest of our industry so our whole industry can rise with all the other boats. So until next time, thank you very much for joining us on this episode of the Growth Focus podcast. And until next time, I look forward to seeing you soon. Take care. Bye bye. Bye bye, Gertie.
Bye.